Και επειδή το συζητάγατε πριν και το λέγατε, ήθελα να δούμε και τις απόψεις του, ήθελα να δούμε και τι λέει και αυτός. Εσείς που ξέρετε περισσότερα για το παιχνίδι, να πείτε τι πιστεύετε. Εντάξει.
It's a bad game. A really bad game. Let me explain. If you're new to my channel, definitely consider subscribing. I like to talk about nostalgic games and games that come back to life in a modern setting. Now, why am I talking about Elden Ring if that's what my channel's about? Well, Elden Ring in particular is coming from me, a nostalgic gamer who's actually coming in and playing. Of course, I play modern games, but this one really bothered me, especially because it won so many Game of the Year awards.
Έχετε πάρει Steam Deck κανένας?
Elden Ring is considered by many one of the best games ever created, and one of the best games of 2022 without question. Except, I questioned it a lot. I really don't get it, and I'm going to explain why and where that comes from. So let's first start off with, how did I first hear about Elden Ring? Well, I was
έχεις Steam Deck, σκέφτομαι να πάρω ένα.
actually staying overseas at a friend's house for some time, and he's a pretty avid gamer, and he was talking about, and he's much younger than me, and he was talking about how a new game is coming out and everybody's raving about it before it even came out. It was a lot of marketing hype towards it, and it was a game called Elden Ring. And Elden Ring, at the time, I never heard of it, and I didn't have the hype for it, but he was talking about it, and then I started looking it up, and there was definitely hype there, and he was ready to purchase it on day one. And he hyped it up enough to where I was like, you know what, I think I want to pick up Elden Ring too. It looks kind of interesting, and George R.R. Martin has a lot to do with the story. This has got to be a good game, and I'm jumping in on a fresh story, and I love good stories in video games, so I'm all in. I get Elden Ring, he gets Elden Ring. I had my laptop, so I would be able to play it there overseas while he had his
Πώς το σέρνετε έτσι το παιχνίδι?
huge desktop setup and ready to go. So I start up Elden Ring after installing it, and I didn't like it. Now, let me explain a little bit more why and where that comes from, and why my opinion is probably different than most others. Now, a little bit of background about Elden Ring. Elden Ring was developed by kind of like the same team that created Dark Souls, and it's kind of like in that intertwined. It's not in the same world, but it's kind of like the same like development methodology and how that gameplay is. It kind of tiered its way, from what I know, into Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring's story was partially crafted by George R.R. Martin. Now, he had a lot to do with like the basics of the world and the story, but it was really the director of the game that took it from a gameplay perspective and developed it for Elden Ring, the video game.
Δεν έχει ιδέα από From αυτός, λέει πράγματα τα οποία είναι λάθος αυτή τη στιγμή. Τόση ώρα δεν μας λέει γιατί δεν του αρέσει. Ξέρω εγώ, πρέπει να δούμε γιατί του αρέσει. Δώσε του λίγο χρόνο, τι να πω.
So now enough about the game, let's talk about what my initial impressions were. So I booted up the game, and I created my character, and then I started the story, which seemed kind of empty. It had some synopsis to it, but then when I start playing, the world itself seemed very empty. And then there were these things on the floor that would kind of drop like either hints, or they were just nonsensical statements that were made that you could find everywhere, because this game is online and a lot of people can leave their comments about the game like scattered all around there. But I didn't know that. It was day one. It was like launch date when it came out, and it had all of those comments. But I'm like running around and I'm trying to like figure things out and get a hold on the many things going on.
Οπότε με λίγα λόγια μπερδεύτηκε και τον ενοχλούσε που δεν ήξερε τι να κάνει.
In the way of where you need to go for most of the time, but as you're going, you're just trying to get a grasp on this beautiful looking world. Now the graphics are pretty impressive. Though I gotta be honest, graphics don't always do it for me. It's really interesting gameplay. So I'm learning the buttons, the mechanics, and just kind of going around. And then I encounter my first enemy after a few minutes and get killed instantly. Now I know this game is particularly hard, and it's known to be hard, and the part of the challenge and part of the quote-unquote fun is to get past those difficulties and learn how to get better and then level up and all of that stuff. But it was just weird. These encounters that I had were just weird. It's almost like there's no reason on why someone would come and just start attacking me. it almost seemed like everyone I see is trying to kill me. That's so pointless, especially early on in the game, if I don't have some context around it. And the context around this game and why things are
Το παίξε σε laptop και είναι και λίγο στόκος.
But you're trying to actually engross me in this world early on. And the Dark Souls type of games and those type of games I've never been involved in, or I've never been a real fan of because I haven't really played them that much. I actually have Dark Souls for PlayStation 3, but I never even touched it. I actually got it for free. And I felt like empty. Like, I like a story. Like playing, for example, God of War Ragnarok or the other God of War that came out for PlayStation 4. The story builds you in, it builds the drama, it builds the emotion.
Μπορεί τα frames να είναι τόσο άσχημα μόνο στο recording και όχι στο gameplay. Άμα δεν ξέρει πώς να γράψει στο laptop, δηλαδή μπορεί το laptop να το παίζει καλά το game, απλά το recording να ήταν choppy. Παίζει και αυτό.
As you go and start doing your action set pieces, and you're not always, you know, fighting and doing all of that. There's enough set pieces to where you actually are more involved and more engaged in the story and the gameplay, because the gameplay is amazing too. Not to say that Elden Ring's gameplay isn't amazing. It's got its pros, but it's...
Εγώ ήθελα να πω αυτό, δηλαδή, στην κουβέντα με τη σύγκριση με τον God of War, η σύγκριση με τον God of War πού βασίζεται? Κοιτάξτε παιδιά, δεν μπορούμε, κοιτάξτε να δείτε, μπορεί να λέει κάποια πράγματα τα οποία είναι μαλακίες, να είναι λάθος, αλλά οφείλουμε να σεβαστούμε, πώς θα το πω, δηλαδή οφείλουμε να δεχτούμε το ότι σε κάποιον άνθρωπο δεν του άρεσε το παιχνίδι ή κάτι τον ενόχλησε, δηλαδή δεν μπορούμε να τους θεωρούμε όλους αυτούς οι οποίοι πιάνουν ένα παιχνίδι, όπως και εγώ δεν ξέρω από Elden Ring και από From. Δηλαδή, δεν μπορούμε να το θεωρούμε όλους αυτούς που πιάνουν ένα παιχνίδι ότι πρέπει οπωσδήποτε να το εκτιμήσουν. Καταλάβατε τι θέλω να σου πω? Δεν γίνεται αυτό.
Definitely got its cons. It's really, at least from early on, from my perspective, I don't get it. I really don't. And if you want to build in new players to actually enjoy this type of gameplay, it's got to be a little...
Δεν νομίζω ότι προσπαθεί να φέρει δεν νομίζω ότι προσπαθεί να φέρει καινούριους παίχτες. Δεν νομίζω ότι προσπαθεί να φέρει καινούριους παίχτες στο universe αυτό, η From. Νομίζω ότι προσπαθεί να βγάλει το παιχνίδι που χρειάζεται για αυτούς οι οποίοι θέλουν να παίξουν τέτοια παιχνίδια. Καταλάβατε? Κάτι θέλω να σας πω. Νομίζω ότι θέλει να βγάλει ένα παιχνίδι το οποίο προορίζεται για αυτούς οι οποίοι παίζουν αυτά τα games. Όπως η Larian έβγαλε τον Baldur's Gate που είναι για αυτόν τον κόσμο. Έχεις δίκιο, sorry, σιγάρε Μάριο, δεν έγινε τίποτα. Δεν πήγαινε καν σε σένα, γενικά το λέω.
A little bit more approachable, and I just was bored, unbelievably bored with the vast, quiet, nonsensical world that I was dealing with. Now let's talk about the difficulty. Yes, I mentioned that I loved the story and like...
Λέει στο Σονάκιας, δεν ξέρω. Μπορεί.
Action games like Spider-Man, Miles Morales that just
λες,
PC. The stories get you engaged, the gameplay is great, but it all has a nice flow to it. Even though, for example, Spider-Man, Miles Morales is an open world game and you can do so many different side quests, you're still led on to a path of like...
Τι recordings είναι αυτά ρε παιδιά το PC του?
Going from there. Whereas Elden Ring, yeah, you have motivations, but everything is so boring. It's just a boring game. It's laid out very boring. I'm not even going to say hard.
Μαριό, εγώ νομίζω ότι για να ασχοληθεί κάποιος με ένα παιχνίδι και να καταλάβει καλά τι γίνεται στο universe της From, πρέπει να έχει ασχοληθεί χρόνια, να έχει ψαχτεί, να έχει δώσει χρόνο ρε παιδί μου, να έχει δώσει μελέτη. Δεν γίνεται παίζοντας ένα game να καταλάβεις τι γίνεται. Αυτός τώρα το κοιτάει τελείως επιφανειακά και το βλέπει σαν έναν casual gamer που το πιασε. Καταλάβατε? Και πάλι όμως είναι κάτι το οποίο πρέπει ο developer ο ίδιος να το σεβαστεί. Δηλαδή, σαν developer, άμα θέλεις να παίξει ο κόσμος σου τα παιχνίδια. Βασικά δεν θέλει η From να. Δεν τους ενδιαφέρει άμα θα πάνε καινούργιοι παίχτες. Δεν νομίζω. Προορίζεται σε ένα συγκεκριμένο κοινό το παιχνίδι αυτό.
Actually turned me away from this game. It was the fact that I found it very boring. Now, speaking of difficult.
Δηλαδή δεν διαφωνήσω μαζί του. Δηλαδή το θεωρώ και εγώ βαρετά πολύ. Μόλις έκανα 15.000 φορές να σκοτώσω τον Κινησίρο και μετά τον σκότωσα στο Σεκύρο, μετά δεν ήθελα να συνεχίσω καν το παιχνίδι. Δεν ξέρω, δηλαδή είμαι εγώ έτσι. Απλά θέλω το παιχνίδι να ρέει. Δεν θέλω να έχω σκαμπανεβάσματα. Έχω σκαμπανεβάσματα στην καθημερινότητά μου, στη δουλειά μου, στην οικογένειά μου, στα παιδιά μου, ιστορίες. Δεν θέλω και όταν παίζω ένα παιχνίδι να μου βγαίνει πίστη. Έτσι είμαι εγώ. Αν νιώθει και αυτός έτσι, δεν έχουμε μεγάλη διαφορά.
Being a nostalgic gamer and a gamer that has been playing games since the mid-80s, there was a game for Sega Master System called R-Type. And R-Type was a game which is a shoot 'em up And it wasn't much story into it. Like, you pop the cartridge in the Sega Master System, and you literally are a spaceship, start shooting everything, and pretty much that's it. And it gave you 3 lives and a 1-hit kill. So you had to do everything perfect. And let me tell you, so many bullets flew around, you were like lucky just to get past a few levels.
Ναι, πολύ δύσκολο παιχνίδι.
But the game itself and the gameplay and everything involved was fun. Like, I could see myself just...
Νομίζω ότι είναι λίγο και να... Λέει ότι είναι κακό παιχνίδι. Μπορεί να είναι και λίγο ότι αν βγάλουμε και τα views, ξέρεις.
Playing it, get a little bit further, recognizing the patterns, and then just going. But it wasn't impossible to enjoy the game. Did I ever beat it fairly without a cheat code? No, that game was really hard. But it was fun enough to where I would want to try. And because it got you in quickly, and you knew kind of what you were doing from the get-go, to me it was more enjoyable. And then like the stuff that you would get, like the special guns and everything that you would have, was so cool that I actually found that game to be one of my favorite games, despite the fact that it was unbelievably hard. Elden Ring, I couldn't get invested enough in that boring world or boring intro to even care about it. Now,
η προσυπεράσπιση του, χωρίς να θέλω να μειώσω το Elden Ring, καταλαβαίνω την αξία του, έτσι. Έχω ακούσει από πάρα πολύ κόσμο ότι είναι πολύ βαρετό σαν παιχνίδι. Με διαφορετικούς τρόπους και με διαφορετικό context. Τώρα δεν ξέρω τι εννοούν με αυτό. Κάτι θα εννοούν. Δεν ξέρω γιατί επιμένουν κάποιοι.
I spoke earlier about my friend who bought it and was super excited about it. He would spend night after night after night playing Elden Ring. Αν
χρησιμοποιείς τα εργαλεία, ναι, το έχω ακούσει αυτό πολύ. Ότι πρέπει να φαρμάρεις αρκετά και να χρησιμοποιείς αυτά που κάνεις και που σου δίνει. Και άμα το κάνεις, τότε το παιχνίδι θα είναι πολύ πιο εύκολο. Εμένα το Sekiro μου βγήκε Παναγία να φτάσω εκεί που φτάσα. Και μετά απλά βαρέθηκα, λέω δεν θέλω άλλο.
For hours. Because he had a day job. So at night he'd come in, lock himself in his computer room and play for hours. Absolutely loved the game. Could I see what he liked? No. It just didn't appeal to me. Now everyone's got a different opinion, but if there's someone out there that can see that the fact that this game, at least for someone who's new,
έχει την εξερεύνηση του Breath of the Wild, δεν καταλαβαίνεις, ναι.
Unbelievably bored. It's horrible. Now adult
μ' άρεσε πολύ το Breath of the Wild. Προσωπικά πάρα πολύ. Και δεν ήταν και το πιο εύκολο παιχνίδι.
And I love my PlayStation Vita because it allows me to play a game, play it for a few minutes, and then put it away. And yes, this game does work for Steam Deck, so maybe I'll try to give it more of a shot, but there's so much patience I have to have because being a busy guy, working on videos, then having a day job, which is completely different from YouTube, because I don't make money off of this channel. I do it for fun and for you guys. There's a limited amount of time that I have, and I do appreciate my sleep. I am not losing sleep over.
Νομίζω καταλαβαίνω γιατί λέει για την εξερεύνηση του Breath of the Wild. Και το Breath of the Wild ήταν ένα πολύ open παιχνίδι. Καταλάβες, δηλαδή δεν σου εξηγούσε. Δεν σου εξηγούσε πολλά πράγματα. Έτσι, και ανακάλυπτε συνέχεια πράγματα. Μπορώ να καταλάβω τι θέλουν να πούνε σε αυτό το θέμα. Το έχω ξανακούσει για το Breath of the Wild, δεν είναι η πρώτη φορά. Για πολύ κόσμο να το αναφέρει το θέμα του open world. Για το context το οποίο αναφέρεται αυτό.
For a game that I find absolutely boring, when I've got a backlog of games that are actually fun and engaging.
Δεν νομίζω ότι γίνεται απευθεία σύγκριση με το Breath of the Wild. Δεν νομίζω ότι αυτό ψάχνει να πει. Ποιος το είπε πάνω? Κάποιος το είπε από εσάς. Ο Σύφης το είπε. Δεν νομίζω ότι γίνεται απευθεία σύγκριση.
Because after all that media hype where all the channels talk about how wonderful this is, and when the Steam Deck came out, I was like, oh, it can play Elden Ring. How amazing. No, I don't care. Now, I've actually been putting up on this video gameplay of me like playing Elden Ring and being stuck in this one particular spot over and over again. That's not bad, but my problem with it was not the difficulty of like this spot. It's the fact that it makes no sense on why I'm getting attacked by this huge monster that comes out of nowhere or the guys with arrows. It made no sense. And the fact that their accuracy with the arrows is unparalleled. Like, holy cow, they'll never miss. If you're coming, they'll never miss. You have to constantly dodge. And it's what? Like, there's hard and then there's ridiculous. And that is just ridiculously hard. And there's no point to it. It doesn't seem like there's any logical value on why they would have to make it that difficult. And it's almost like Gus, they just want you to play it and actually extend the life of the game, because if you have to do it over and over and over again, and Elden Ring, from what I hear, is a pretty long game anyway, I couldn't get into it. And even if this had an easy mode, I'm just not into the world, and it didn't do any proper world building that got me into it. And I've given this game plenty of chances. It's not just like I played it once and I was done.
Αν είχε easy mode θα το έπαιζα κι εγώ. Έχουν βγάλει και κάτι mods που το κάνουν easy και καλά. Αλλά οκ. Okay. Θέλω να πω, βαριέμαι. Απλά.
With it. I would come back to it because you keep hearing all these channels and all these YouTubers like, this is the greatest game ever created. This is so awesome. And I'm like, I just don't see it. Graphically, fine. I mean, it looks great. It runs great on my computer as well. But I don't get it. Now, again, I have a feeling that a lot of the reason why I can't get into it, and maybe most people can, is because I don't have the time.
Είναι η κλασική φάση όπου φτιάχνει ένα ολόκληρο βίντεο το οποίο κρατάει 20 λεπτά για να 15 λεπτά, δεν ξέρω πόσο είναι, απλά για να μας πει ότι δεν μου αρέσει το Elden Ring για 2-3 λόγους. Θα μπορούσε να γίνει όλο σε 3 λεπτά.
Time that I used to have when I was much younger. But I'm also someone who's an older gamer, and when I play modern games, I do like to have just kind of that world building. I do like to have a more pick up and play style. It can be complex, but if it gets too complex, it's not that I can't get into it or I can't figure it out. It's just that it's because my time is so limited, because I have so many things that's going on. I don't feel like this game earns.
Δεν, κοιτάξτε, αυτό που λέει τώρα δεν έχει άδικο, ρε φίλε. Έτσι ακριβώς νιώθω και εγώ. Δηλαδή, όταν η ζωή σου είναι ήδη φορτωμένη με 1002 πράγματα, δυσκολεύεσαι να πεις ότι θα κάτσω να παίξω. Έχω μόνο 1-2 ωρίτσες και τώρα θα κάτσω να φάω αυτές τις 2 ωρίτσες να κάθομαι στο ίδιο σημείο του χάρτη για να με βαράνε το χτώτε. Δηλαδή, είναι το κοινό της From πολύ συγκεκριμένο, ρε φίλε. Είναι για αυτούς οι οποίοι έχουν την υπομονή, έχουν το χρόνο, έχουν τη δυνατότητα να πούνε ότι ξέρεις τι, είναι αυτοί οι οποίοι παίζουν από πολύ μικρή τέτοια παιχνίδια, οπότε και να μην έχουν πολύ χρόνο τους βγαίνουν λίγο πιο naturally, καταλάβω θέλω να πω. Δηλαδή μπορώ να τον καταλάβω σε αυτό και εγώ έτσι νιώθω. Ότι κοίταξε, δεν έχω απλή το χρόνο στη ζωή. Καταλάβατε, δηλαδή θέλω να κάτσω να παίξω 2 ώρες, θα βάλω να παίξω ξέρω εγώ, το τάδε, δεν ξέρω. Τώρα αυτές τις μέρες παίζω το Wrath, το Iron of Ruin, 3D Realms. Εντάξει, ρέει το παιχνίδι, 2 ώρες παίζω. Τώρα, άμα είναι να κάτσω 2 ώρες να κάθομαι στο ίδιο σημείο που βαράνε το ξώτος και πεθαίνω και μετά πάω για ύπνο κλαμμένος, είναι συγκεκριμένο το κοινό. Είναι όπως είναι αυτοί που παίζουν Baldur's Gate από τη Larian, είναι όπως αυτοί που παίζουν Call of Duty, είναι και αυτοί που παίζουν From. Καταλάβατε.
My attention, and it doesn't. So, all in all, the marketing and friends hype, yeah, I fell for it. But at the end of the day, this.
Δεν είναι για αυτούς παίκτες που έχουν χρόνο και υπομονή, δεν έχω τίποτα δύο. Ακριβώς έτσι είμαι κι εγώ. Ο χρόνος που έχω πάει στα streams, μέσα στη μέρα έχω λίγο για να παίξω. Δεν έχω ούτε την υπομονή ούτε τον χρόνο. Και να είχα τον χρόνο θα τον έδινα σε κάτι άλλο που θα με ευχαριστούσε εμένα πιο πολύ. Σέβομαι απόλυτα. Είναι εκπληκτικά παιχνίδια. Είναι φανταστικά. Το Sekiro ήταν φοβερό το συναίσθημα όταν έφαγα τον Genishiro μετά από 65 tries. Αλλά δεν θέλω να το ξανακάνω. Και εκεί το σταμάτησα. Μετά από 4-5 bosses λέω παιδιά δεν θέλω. Δεν έχω καμία όρεξη. Εντάξει. Απλά.
Game is not for me. And it might not be for you either if you're anything like me. Let me know what you guys think, and I imagine that I'm going to get slaughtered in the comments. But let me know what made you like the game, what made you, if you do like Elden Ring, what made you kind of like jump into it and really appreciate it for what it was? Or were you like me, where you're like,
Με το συγκρίνω με το Sekiro, όχι, δεν το συγκρίνω με το Sekiro, αλλά όλα αυτά είναι μια κατηγορία, είναι μια οικογένεια από μόνα του. Έτσι δεν είναι. Κάπως έτσι.